Hey all, so I'm going to the flea market this weekend and I want to be able to haul stuff around, so I'm going to use it as an excuse to finally work on a project that got stalled, which is my lowered wagon. So this is a vintage radio flyer wagon that I started building lowered frame for. So I started building a frame for this, got a fair ways along. You can see it's secured to two of the original mounting holes back here, and then comes in, it kicks in, and then mounts to two of the original mounting holes up here, and then you can see the frame, it's upside down right now, so the frame kicks up, and then it has a front cross piece. This is as far as I got. A couple things that happened when I was building this. One is this rear axle's just a little bit too narrow. It looks right when you test fit the wheels, it seems right, but once you have the wheels on and you set it on the ground and put any weight, they rub the body over here. So the wheels need to be spaced out a little bit, but this axle's not wide enough for that. I may also want to raise it up just a little bit in the back because I think I want to give it a little bit more of a rake. But what I need to do is build the front end, suspension and steering and everything, and then compare that, where that ends up, to the back, and decide from there where I'm going. So what we're going to do now is work on the front end. So this is the front end that I built. This is actually just a piece of flat stock cut with a slight V in it, and then two pieces of flat stock welded to it, and then this shape you see here is purely by building up weld and grinding. I just decided I liked that, so that's what I went with. The two ends are not parallel, like they're not cut the same, because I was going to do that at the time. So the thing is, this is the original front end off of it, and it pivots at a single point. Anybody who's ever had a wagon, you know what this is, how this works. That does not translate well once you're lowering a wagon like this, because if you have the pivot here, the wheels run into the body without much turning. So what you have to do is actually create two separate spindles and then connect to them. So that's what I'm going to be attempting to do. I've never built anything like this before, so it's going to be an interesting process to figure it out. I also have multiple sets of wheels. I have the four original wheels off the wagon, which all look like this and have the hubcaps, and then I've got these two spoked wheels that came off of a vintage golf cart caddy thing. So these are probably what I'm going to use in the front. They're basically the same diameter. I think the golf cart ones are, they're functionally the same diameter. Sorry, they are functionally the same diameter. The golf cart ones take the same axle shaft, everything, so they're completely interchangeable in any meaningful way. So what I have to figure out is, I have some metal from when I started doing this before, but I've got to figure out how to build a spindle mount, how to build a spindle, how to connect that to a turning system that can either use the original handle or a handle based around that original handle. So that's what I've got to design today and get together, and then see if I can make it work. I have no idea if I can make this function or not, but we're going to find out together. All right, sorry about the compressor in the background, but let me show you what I've been working on. This is just square tubing that I drilled a hole through, but ignore my horrible cut here. These are going to be the holders for my spindles. These will basically be the ends of the axle, and then this is going to be the spindle itself, is this tube, which is going to use a 1/2-inch bolt as essentially a kingpin. So picture this cut off and on that bolt, which means that this will be able to pivot freely inside here. And then this piece that I was working on, when it bolts in, this is going to be my axle. So what I'm going to do is put a nice hot weld all the way around there, and then the wheel will be able to drop onto that, and that'll be what's going to hold the wheel to the spindle, and then the spindle will go inside this bracket, and I'm going to then have to build off of it a mount for essentially the tie rod so I can have it pivot. But right now what I have to do is get this welded in exactly 90 degrees in all dimensions. I was using the die grinder to put a little round chamfer in here just so that this can sit down on that bolt a little bit more, which will give me just that extra little bit of material to weld to. I'm going to weld to it with the full bar and then cut it just for simplicity. So yeah, I'm going to weld that, and then I'm basically going to chop this off, do the same thing all over again, and I'm going to chop it off with more space than I think I'll need, and then do the exact same thing again. And then from there I'm going to level these up to each other and cut them both to be the right length to be in here so that the axles are at the same depth on either side. So yeah, that's what I'm getting to now. Alright, for some reason the camera shut off partway through that, but making the second one was the same as making the first one. So now I have two spindles, more or less. And I have two spindle holders, I guess. So these need to go like that, basically. Oops, like that. So that the spindles, obviously, which are still too long, can go in them and pivot. And what I need to figure out now is the cuttings thereof. Now, if I put the wheel right on here, that puts me basically at the same height as the rear and with plenty of clearance at the bottom. So I think what will probably make the most sense is I'm going to cut these so they're more or less centered. Exactly being centered is not as important as both of them being cut at the same height. So the tires are at the same height. And then these are going to be welded higher up on this front axle because that'll give me more clearance at the top to run the links for the steering. I also want to hide the steering. No, because I'd rather have the front end be kind of... Because if I do this, that puts the wheel here instead, which is at least 2 inches, inch and a half, 2 inches above where the rear is now, so the rear can be even higher up. So that'll be good. So I'm going to clamp these. I think I'm going to clamp these in the vise so that that'll make sure that both of these axle shafts are at the same place, make sure that they're even, and then I can make my two cuts and be reasonably confident I'm making straight cuts. They won't be perfect, but they'll be pretty darn close, I think. I don't have any good way to make a perfect 90-degree cut because I don't have a contained either chop saw or bandsaw. So I have to live with some degree of error creeping into it just given the tools that I have available to me. And then once I have these cut, I can mount them into these, which will then allow me to get those mounted because I'll have a way to measure that they're at the same height. I'll have to adjust my angles here because I know this one is straighter, this one's tipped in more. And then once I have all that, once I have the spindles mounted to the front of this, then I can start figuring out how to make it all steer. A smarter person would have designed this all from ahead of time, but I've never done this before, so So yeah, let's get these cut so they fit in here. We've gotten somewhere. Check this out. These still need to be shaped so they look a little nicer, but I've got both spindles in. They both pivot well beyond anything they'll need to. The wheels, even before trimming, they basically don't hit at any point in their arc. I have to like trim off the corners because those are getting in the spokes, but these are going to get rounded off, so that's totally fine. I'm going to trim these axles to length later, but I'm not going to worry about it for right now. I actually like having an extra length to play with because I shorted myself at the back and it caused enough problems that I still have to fix. So I took the handle off of here, which is here, because that's going to obviously still need to do its handle duties. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to lengthen it. It's going to be way too short, especially with this lowered, but that's going to end up here. This area that it pivoted on, I may be able to reuse. I think I need to get the wheels off of here. And then I have a pivot. I don't know if it's of any use to me though. It's a pretty crappy pivot, so I won't be sad if I can't use it. But if I could, that would be kind of cool. No, I'm not going to use that, because what I need is essentially on the same plane as these. I need a tube with another bolt in it that when you pull the handle one way or the other, it pivots on that, but then there's a bar that comes off of that and a bar that comes off of each of these that are linked together with more pivots, so that if you swing the handle this way, this pivots this way and pushes that wheel out and pulls this wheel in, and then vice versa. That's how, in the most basic sense, that's how all steering on cars and such works. So yeah, so I need to put a pivot in here, and then I need to start figuring that out. These are going to need, coming off of them, that bar, which is going to hit this, but that's not a thing that worries me because I don't need this to like be drift spec level of angle. But yeah, I got to build those out. Got to build a pivot here and then a plate there that this. I am going to reuse the snout of this because I like that idea. It'll be an interesting touch to reuse that and this plate, but I think what's going to happen is I'm going to flatten them out. I'm going to flatten these out relative to each other, because right now, this is, you know, when it was on the wagon, this was flat and this was at an angle, and they met with the bolt that goes through here. If I cut this off, like here and here, I can then bring this up and make them on the same plane. I think this section is going to end pretty quickly because it's going to be out here. It's going to be flat here, but I think I'm going to hide a bar of thicker stock underneath that where the actual pivot is. So I think I'm going to hide the pivot and the rear piece under this plate and maybe trim this plate back once I know its exact size. That'll make this look a little bit cleaner right here, and it'll bring some of the vintage pieces back into it, which I really like. So yeah. All right, this came out amazing. So, what did I do? I used some, I think this was from a garage door opener, to make my two tie rod thingies, whatever you want to call it. This was part of the original hoop. I just like reusing when I can. There's a loop thing here that's welded to the back of the axle that this bolt goes into. This bolt is very slightly back relative to these two, but not enough to really provide any important amounts of binding. I may open up some of these holes just a little bit because the slop will help. And then this was just a bar that already had a hole in it, so I measured, drilled 2 holes in it, cut it to size, and as you can see, it does exactly what it's supposed to. Everything moves in parallel. Just before I turn the camera on, I measured, and the measurement from this to this and at the back, I'm like 1/16 of an inch towed inwards, which is perfect. You actually want the very slightest bit of toe in if you're going to have any. So yeah, this all works. I need to get proper hardware for this. Like I need proper length bolts with nuts to become these. The inside's going to get packed with grease during the final assembly, so that'll all move nicely. I need a longer bolt for here. Actually, no, I don't. No, this one will be fine. Anyway, I need a lock washer for here, or a lock nut, rather. These I'm gonna either put a jam nut on or put nylocks and leave them a little bit loose so that they have some room to move without undoing themselves. And then this is what has the thing to hold the handle. So what I'm going to do with this is basically trim an arc back here as neatly as I can. This is going to get set on top of here, and what I'm going to do is put a sleeve through here that picks up that same bolt for the handle, so that'll hold that on there. And then I'll do something at the back. I haven't figured out quite what yet. Maybe, you know what I might even do? I might leave a little of this and have this bolt go through there. We'll figure it out. But anyway, so that's going to end up looking more or less like that, with a little less back there, so that the handle has something to go onto, and also it picks back up, you know, the original parts. So this isn't all just brand new fabrication here. But yeah, this looks so cool. I'm so happy. I need to clean up a lot of edges. There's some touch-ups of the welding I need to do here and there. But this is exactly what I wanted. This looks so much like what I wanted. It'll be a little cleaner. It'll be a little nicer. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do paint-wise. I'm actually leaning towards not. I'm leaning towards scuffing it all back to shiny metal, giving it a very poor coat of black, and then gouging it up so it kind of looks like the handle here or something. But I don't know if I want to do that. We'll figure it out later. The handle's going to need to be lengthened, so that's another project. And then I need to install the rear axle, or widen. I either need to widen what's there, or I need to raise it up slightly. But that is a good day's work. And then, so these are the wheels that are going to go on the front, these wires up with the sort of red line. And then I'm going to put the original wheels on the back. These are going to get a cleanup with some CLR. I'll probably pick like the 2 nicest ones, and I'll clean them up with CLR to get all this sort of rusting off of here, make these a little bit shinier, but leave the original paint. These are going to get polished so that they look really nice. I just really like the original wheels. They're kind of crazy in that they've got like Orgo, Air King, and a size on here like they're a real tire, even though they're just solid hard rubber. But I think once I get some hardware for this, I've got one more evening's easy work on this to finish up some details, back axle, lengthening that, making that look a little bit nicer, and then this is going to be ready to roll, and it's going to look so goddamn cool. All right. Thank you all very much for watching. In the next episode, we'll get this finished up and ready to roll. And I'll see you then. Talk to you later. Bye.